He must have been putting the gold and everything else he had on the line at every point in his life. Kinzo had probably looked at his clock at times, maybe flipping the activation switch and letting the clock tick down. Whenever things got tough and he got stuck, maybe he would hide in here and flip the switch. Might have made it a rule for himself that he would blow everything away if he couldn't think of a brilliant plan before midnight came. Man, that is quite an extreme way of motivating yourself, Christ. I mean, you know, it makes sense for someone like Kinzo, I guess. He didn't care about anybody else besides Beatrice, so... Could it be that he was using this as motivation for him to keep going, to find Beatrice? Perhaps Sushiromiya Kinzo's real study wasn't the one in the mansion, but this place instead.
Oyaji らしい仕掛けだぜ。俺たち子供は親父が悩み事をするたびに道連れにされてたかもしれないってわけだ。
あのお父様ならあり得る話ね。
この仕掛けももはや皆さんのものです。大爆発をお望みでしたらいつでもどうぞ。
アホ抜かせ。誰が大爆発なんか望むんや。
半世紀も前の爆弾でしょ。本当に爆発するの？
はい、もちろん。爆薬も信管も健在です。試しましたから。
No. Okay. I think I can see where she's going with this. Remember the Torii Gate? I did have my own idea that maybe the reason why Shannon destroyed the Torii Gate, because I was thinking that the Torii Gate was destroyed by explosive. That the reason why she would destroy the Torii Gate is because that is where her mother, Kuwadori and Beatrice, died, and he wanted to blow it all up so that she wouldn't remember it. But yeah, I guess that's this is another reason. She did want to test them out, after all. I mean, it could be that they won't work, so... Well, I mean... It could also be like both at the same time. Maybe Kuwadori and Beatrice did die there. And decided, hey, why not test these bombs as well while at it? Yeah, the Torii Gate.
そうか、やっとわかったよ。鎮守の社が跡形もなく消え去ったのはそういうわけか。
In the summer, the shrine had disappeared without a trace, along with the reef under it. It felt strange that the waves could have destroyed it without a trace like that, but no one had paid it much mind. And now, this piece perfectly fit into the hole left by that strange fiddle.
いかにも半世紀を経て今なお爆薬が健在であるかあの社で実験させていただきました。結果は皆さんもご承知の通りです。あの程度の量であの岩礁が丸々消え去るのですから。900トンもの爆薬があれば地図が書き換わるほどの爆発を起こすことは容易に想像できるでしょう。
そんな爆弾を爆発させたら確かに我々はみんな死ぬだろうね。しかし君はどうしたの？まさか私たちと一緒に心中するつもりだったとは思えんが。
この地下貴賓室は基地跡の地下通路に通じています。それをまっすぐ進めば島の反対側にある隠し屋敷 クアドリアに出ることができます。距離は約 2km。 そこまで逃げれれば爆発からも逃れられるでしょ
う。なるほどね。爆発の直前にそこへ逃れるつもりだったのね。
そうすることも可能というだけの話です。皆さんは信じないでしょうが、私は皆さんの誰も謎を解くことができず第9の番を迎えてしまったなら、全てと共に心中するつもりでおりましたから。
こいつ頭がどうかしてやがる。
イカれてるのよ。考えるだけ無駄だわ。この女は私たちがもし碑文を解けなければあそこの銃で、あるいはそこの爆弾のスイッチで私たちを皆殺しにしたのよ。それだけは疑いようがないわ。
その通りです。皆さんは誰一人犠牲者を出さないという最善の形でこのゲームを終えられたのです。敬意を表すると同時に心より感服いたします。私があれだけ長い時間をかけて解いた謎を7人がかりとはいえ一晩で。
Well, I mean, eh.
それは称えられるべきです。
私も君の潔さに敬意を表するよ。君の処遇はこれから考えるが、極力紳士的なものになるよう配慮するつもりだ。
私のことはもうお気になされず、私は皆さんを殺し自らも死ぬ覚悟をすでにしている亡者なのですから。
The golden witch Beatrice saw the epitaph, reached this room, and revived. And now, new people had solved the riddle and reached this room, so her role was finished. When the epitaph's riddle was solved, Beatrice's witch illusion ended. Most likely, no one in this room would have been capable of understanding her tragic resolve. She herself was probably the only one who could. As long as the many selves inside of her understood, that was enough. I am one, yet many. I entrusted myself to the magical roulette of endless possibilities. The result, the answer, is this. And this is what the tarot cards known as the Ritual of the Epitaph have shown me. Beatrice is now dead. They did not kill her. I killed her myself, in accordance with fate's command. And they will never understand for all eternity. The witch stared up at the ceiling without speaking for a moment, then looked as though she'd suddenly remembered something. She grabbed at the sleeves of her dress and took out some sort of card.
そうそう、忘れていました。私に死に銭など必要ありませんので、これも皆さんにお渡しします。
キャッシュカード？
黄金の一部を現金化していました。それが入っている口座です。
なるほどな。黄金の魔女のまさに魔法エネルギーっちゅうわけやな。
いくら入っているんだね。
詳しくは忘れました。でも10億以上は入っています。
10億。そりゃ確かに魔法だぜ。
そうね。それだけのお金でできないことはないでしょうからね。
そうですね。人間の半魔法の毒素に最も強い唯一の魔法がこの黄金の魔法。ある意味このカードはインゴットよりも強い力を持つかもしれませんね。
まったくだね。インゴットより現金の方が喜ばれるものだ。
どうぞ。私にはもはや不要なものですので。
Alright. And now we acquired the golden card. The card she held out was not taken by any of them. Who would ever just hand over a card with 1,000,000,000 yen in it? The mountain of gold, the device for blowing up the island, the card with 1,000,000,000 yen. All these are past their understanding. So, no one could bring themselves to take it.
気に入らないわ。
Yeah, I guess now the adults are in that stage of thinking, wait a minute, this is a little too good to be true.
何がですか？
黄金の山を、はいどうぞ。爆弾も解除します。10億のカードもどうぞ。話がうますぎて気持ち悪いのよ。あんた、何か私たちを騙そうって企んでるんじゃないでしょうね。
I mean, Christ. From the adult perspective, here you have this random ass woman that looks like the beloved person of Kinzo that he talked about and muttered about like every single day of his life. And Kinzo himself is not here, although they are thinking that Kinzo actually died, so I guess there's that. But still, it's... Since Kinzo is not even here, in fact, one might actually think that that the adults are thinking that this is all a trick at this point. That maybe Kinzo is not dead. Maybe he's just fucking with them at this point, and we have this scenario over here.
騙す気もありませんが、信じろとも言いません。私はすべてを差し出し、すべてを明かしています。何を信じ、どうしようと、それはもう新しい黄金の主である皆さんが決めることです。私の言うことを何も信じず、この場を立ち去ることさえ皆さんの自由です。
エヴァ、彼女が嘘を言っているとは思えんね。
なんでそうだってわかるのよ。こいつの余裕が気に入らないのよ。まるでもう全てに勝利したかのようだわ。私、今ふと思ったの。爆弾のスイッチとかいうの、オンとオフが逆じゃないの？
それ、どういうこと？姉さん。
Which would mean that it's still active.
さっきその女は爆弾を解除すると言ってそのスイッチをいじったわ。実はその時スイッチを入れたんじゃないの？あんたは私たちに謎を解かれたんで、私たちごと全てを吹き飛ばすために爆弾のスイッチをオンにしたんじゃないの？
Oof. And you know, now, even if Beatrice were to tell the truth, will tell the truth. That's truth. What is it with that word, truth? Is that even a word that exists? Fuck it, I've created a new word today, ladies and gents. I guess we shall think further on what that word means, I guess. It's truth. Sounds like something that the Smurfs would do. But anyway, what was I talking about before? Ah, yeah, like, you know, Beatrice could actually tell them the truth that it was actually off. It wouldn't matter. The adults are still gonna be paranoid as fuck, so... what are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? Are they gonna toy around with the Switch to the point where even if Beatrice turned it off, now they will not know which side is turned on and what side is turned off? Like, what was initially the position that Beatrice left it on? They wouldn't even know that if they were to toy around with that. Ugh.
そうお思いでしたら、どうぞその時計のスイッチを入れてください。
And Beatrice is not helping here.
あと1分で24時。真実は時計が教えてくれます。
なんですって？
60 seconds.
おい、どうすんだよ。今爆弾はオンなのかオフなのか？
彼女が嘘を言ってるとは思えん。今が解除だ。押すべきではない。
も気に入らないのよ。なんでこんなに素直なのこいつ。なん
40 seconds.
でこうも「はいどうぞはいどうぞ」ってなるの。こいつは私たちを騙して時間を稼いでるのよ。
10 seconds.
24時になるまで時間を稼いで私たちを道連れにするつもりだわ。
Okay.
そのスイッチはどうなってるの？オンかオフかわかる形状なの？
On the upper part of the antique clock was a metal switch that could slide right or left. Currently, it was set to the left. However, there were no marks in particular on either side to indicate which side was off and which side was on.
おい、白状しろ。
Well, one can think of it this way. If it is to the left, it almost feels as if, like the switch, like the time is stopped. It goes against clockwise. If you were to move it to the right, then it goes clockwise, meaning that time will continue just as normal, as if you can go forward in life. But, you know, since it's the opposite way around, it stops the time. Basically like how it would explode if it reaches that point. So, yeah, that is one interpretation of it. So basically it's now on right now.
どっちがオフなんだ。
左が今がオフです。
バカルドルフ、その女が正直に言うはずがないでしょ。逆よ、逆に決まってるわ。右がオフなのよ、そうに違いない。
もう時間がないわ姉さん。
よせエヴァ、スイッチをいじるな。今がオフだ。
エヴァさん、その手を離しなさい。私も同感よ。今がオフだ。もし私たちを爆弾で殺すつもりなら、彼女は爆弾の話を告白しなかったはずよ。
Yeah, that's true.
ベアトリーチェ、私を騙そうったってそうはいかないわよ。
5、4、3。
The second hand of the clock ticked past midnight. Okay, so apparently she was telling the truth. I mean, basically, if I were to go with my interpretation from before and switch it back on, well, it would have been quite a huge bakuretsu. On October 4th ended, and the curtain rose on October 5th, 1986. But nah, you know, I feel like if Beatrice were to give us a riddle about it, like intentionally to make us think whether it's on and or off, to let us choose that, then maybe I would have gone with my idea actually. But since she didn't, she said that basically left is off, and she didn't make us think that it is a riddle. She didn't test us or anything like that. Since she didn't do that, then I guess there's no reason for us to think that she will lie, even to this point. If it was like a riddle that she posed on us, then yeah, I probably would have gone with my solution. And if I was wrong, well, at least I myself wouldn't die, because I'm a skeleton. Yo! The switch was still pointing to the left, because, you know, I'm already dead. The switch's words has been proven correct.
これで信用していただけましたか？
With a hideous, sweat-covered expression, Eva snatched the cash card away from the witch's hand.
通帳と印鑑はカードだけじゃ引き出せないわよ。
暗証番号で引き出せます。8桁です。
ちょっと待ちなさいよ。今書くから。
Eva and Kirie both took out a pen and notepad and began writing the 8-digit number the witch told them.
これで私から皆さんへ伝えること、そしてもう私は自ら何も喋りません。役目をすべて終えましたので。
After saying that, the witch spun around and sat down on the bed. She wasn't even looking at the others anymore. She sat there like an empty husk which had, just as she had said, finished everything it existed to do. For a while, everyone watched the witch to see if she would remember something else and start talking. However, she said nothing further. The witch who had called herself one of the dead was now a little more than a large French doll, wearing a black dress. Gold is the only physical embodiment of magic that can appear in the human world. Since ancient times, even a small fragment of it could control man with its magic. In that case, how much magic power would dwell in it? If it was piled up in a mountain so high, you'd have to look up to see the top.
バカ言わないでよ、山分けよ。山分けに決まってんでしょ。
この山の半分がまず私のもので、さらに半分を4等分するという話だったのではないかね。
The yells of the people dancing around the gold reverberated throughout the underground room. Oh my god. You know, with someone like Eva who's actually thinking, hey, let's split evenly, even though for someone like her that we've seen, she wouldn't do something like that. Why are you arguing against that, Kraus, anyway? Like, you're already in hot waters because of Kenzo. But whatever. In front of the pile of gold, they were arguing about how it should be split.
兄さん一人で謎が解けた？解けなかったでしょ？私たち兄弟4人で解いたのよ。4等分で当然でしょうが。
卑劣な黄金の分配についてはあなたたちが提案したのではないですか。それを勝手に保護にするなんて。
取引できる立場だと思ってんのか。親父が死んでることを隠してるくせに。
そうよそうよ。私たちをずっと欺いてお父様の財産を私物化してきたくせに。
それをうやむやにする分も全て含めてチャラにして仲良く4等分。フェアな話だと思うわ。
ほう、そこまで言うなら4等分にしようじゃないか。今すぐこの山を切り分けて自由に持って帰るがいい。2.5 トン分のインゴットが入るポケットでもお持ちならばの話だがね。それに諸君はどうやら黄金の山に惑わされてすっかり冷静な判断を失ってしまっているようだ。
そらどういう意味でっか、クラウス兄さん。
このインゴットを見たまえ。見ての通り刻まれているのは親父殿の紋章だけで正式な刻印ではない。刻印の打たれていないインゴットを諸君はどう換金するというのかね。
ん？それは
ようやく気づいたかね。確かにこの黄金の山には200億円の価値があるだろう。しかしそれは換金を経ればの話だ。これだけの大量の刻印のない正体不明のインゴットを誰にも知られずにしかるべきレートで換金することが君たちにできるのかね。
If it was a necklace or a ring, exchanging it for cash would have been a manageable problem. However, to do that with several tons of unmarked gold that couldn't be made public, It would be impossible for any normal person. However, Kraus could do it. Among the several business associates who had been close to the family since Kinzo's generation, there were some who had black market ties and sufficient financial clout. The billion yen tied to the cash card that the Golden Witch had handed out was also money that had been liquidated via one of Kinzo's connections. However, none of the other siblings had any connections like that. They would have to rely on Kraus to exchange the gold for cash.
ようやく分かってきたかね。親父殿のことを隠していたことは謝ろう。しかし、それを弱みにできるほど君たちは優位な立場にはないのだよ。
その程度のことで優位に立ったつもり？
なんだねその銃は。物騒な真似は慎みたまえ。
Eva was gripping the gun so hard it looked like it might snap. The 4 guns that the witch had placed in this room were now in the hands of the relatives. Just as the gold had led their hearts astray, it seemed these guns had the magical power to turn their hearts to violence. Finally, a scuffle arose between Eva and Kraus. Off to the side, Nazi started arguing with Rudolph and his wife, and the Grand Underground VIP room filled with a cacophony of angry outbursts. Angel's face was starting to contort with pain after being forced to watch this scene for so long. It was unnatural, after being shown this abusive argument between her parents and her other relatives. It was painful for Leon too. Leon would have tried to intervene and calm them, if that had been possible. And the goal wouldn't go anywhere. If they just took their time and thought about it calmly, they would be able to resolve it. Eva and the others had argued that they needed a lot of money before the end of the year, which was understandable. They needed a lot of money right now. However, the billion yen cash card would be more than enough to pay for that. With their emergency expenses taken care of, they could liquidate the gold at their leisure and just split it amongst themselves. Sure, maybe Kraus was the only one capable of uncovering the gold. That might give him an advantage over the other siblings. However, this goal couldn't be dealt with by open means. In addition to attracting public attention, it would also lead to various legal problems. It was better for this secret money to remain secret. If they wanted to get the largest portions possible, then they should all agree not to tell anyone about this gold. In other words, to maximize their profits, they needed a gentleman's agreement that all of them would keep the secret. Kraus did have a slight advantage. However, it was possible for the other relatives to refuse to cooperate and tell the world about the gold. And then there was also the concealment of Kinzo's death to consider. Kraus was an investor. He needed not only financial clout, but also a certain degree of public confidence. His advantage wasn't big enough for him to act so overbearing.
みんな、あの黄金の山に冷静さを失ってしまってる。これは大人の口論じゃない。ただの子供の喧嘩だ。こんな光景を私たちに見せて何が楽しいっての？それともこれが新しい魔女の遊びってわけ？私たちが嫌そうな顔するのをどこかで眺めててニヤニヤしてるってわけ？
By now, even I didn't have a clue who was showing us this, or for what reason. At the very least, it doesn't look as though this new tale is overflowing with affection. At first, I thought it was a tale of a beautiful world where no crime occurred, since Claire had gone past all of her regrets. Something's different. This tale is clearly filled with ill will towards us. I am sure of that much now, but I don't have a clue who would want to show us this. Oh, And there's the first shot. Suddenly, a loud explosion rang out. It didn't feel like the sound of gunfire. After all, most people living a normal life never hear that sound. Drip, 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 drip. Alright, well, let's see. Who was the one who first shot? And the sound of thick raindrops hitting the floor. There was no rain in this underground room. It was the sound of blood dripping down from Natsu's right eye. The bullet had gone in through her right eye, towards the back of her head.
夏日
あんたが突っかかってくるから。
The gun, which fell from Meva's grasp, landed on the floor with a hard metallic clank. As though in response to that sound, Natsu's head slowly turned to face the ceiling. Natsu flopped backwards, with the back of her head and hit the floor. A red splash spread out beneath it, forming a single flower to adorn her dead face.
なぜ撃ったなぜ撃ったエヴァエヴァ
Klaus howled, raised his gun, and ran at Eva. At the same time, Hideyoshi leapt between them. A scuffle broke out between the two men.
よくもナチをナチを
クラウス兄さん、違うんや違うんや、これは事故や。
エヴァよくもナチを殺してやる殺してやる。
私は撃ってないわよ、撃ってない。やめろというのに彼女がしつこく突っかかってくるから。
Klaus, who had just seen his wife killed before his eyes, had lost all trace of rationality in his expression. He was so furious that if he had knocked Hideyoshi aside and jumped at Eva, he might have torn her throat out.
なぜ殺したなぜ殺したエヴァ
これは事故や事故なんや。落ち着いてやクラウス兄さん。あれだからいやもう。
Oh no. Another one, and an explosion rang out. Hidoshi's face was covered with blood. The two of them had been fighting over the gun Kraus held, trying to push it away from themselves. When the barrel had turned to point at Kraus's chin, the sneering Formless Reaper, master of the Realm of Gold, had swung its scythe once more. The line of blood trickled from Kraus's mouth. The two fell down, with Kraus's body on top of Hideyoshi. Letting out a cowardly cry, Hideyoshi backed away before Kraus's body could cover him.
わしは何もしてない。クラウス兄さんの指が引き金にかかっとったんや。事故や事故や。
そうよ、事故よ、これは事故よ。
As the pair of them broke down, sobbing and repeatedly claiming that it was all an accident, Otosa and the others were unable to say a thing. The witch also watched this scene, but said nothing, and appeared to be completely disinterested.
わしらは悪ないで。事故やで、事故。見てたやろ。な
ローザも見てたでしょ。クラウス兄さんもナツヒ姉さんも感情的になって突っかかってくるから。
さあね、私にはわからないわ。
バカローザ、あんた見てたでしょ。そこで見てたんならわかるでしょ。
ごめんなさい。偶然暴発したのか、それを装って殺したのか、 私にはわからないの。
ローザ、あんた。
ルドルフ君、あんたは見てたやろ。わかるやろな。
すまねえがローザに同じだ。事故か恋かなんて俺たちにはわからねえ。
Those Anuro's gazes look very cold and different way upon her husband.
どうするのよ。銃で死んでるのよ。事故とかごまかせないわよ。
森や。森に行って行方不明になったとか言って時間を稼ぐんや。
そんなのでごまかしきれるわけないでしょ。警察が森中を捜索するわよ。そもそもあの未開の森にどうして2人が出かけるのよ。すぐに不審に思われるわよ。騙し通せるわけないわ。
大丈夫や。ここに死体を隠せば誰にも見つからん。みんなで知らんぷりをすればごまかせる。
無理よ。警察をごまかせるわけないわ。遺産問題で揉める親族会議で兄さん夫婦が深夜に揃って失踪なんて、警察が簡単に行方不明で済ましてくれるわけがないわ。
Debatable.
いい案を思いついたわ。
Hmm? Though ever had been scratching her hand, overcome with emotion, her arms suddenly felt as though their strings had been cut.
何か思いついたか。
事故よ。事故に見せかければいいのよ。
アホ抜かせ。事故ってなんや。二人の死体にははっきり銃創が残っとるんやで。火事に見せかけて焼いたって銃で死んだとバレバレや。
火事？そんなのじゃダメよ。もっと大きな事故じゃなきゃ。
大きな事故？
Yeah, they're looking at the clock right now. Eva slowly walked forward and tapped on it and spoke.
爆発事故よ。死体が跡形も残らない事故が起こればいいのよ。
As she played with the switch that would cause an automatic explosion at midnight, Eva spun around to face them, a crazed expression on her face. It was truly a mad inspiration. If they flipped the switch to the right and waited for the midnight, the 900 tons of explosive would wipe out the mansion without a trace. And there wouldn't even be the remnants of the corpses. And thus the explosion would happen on the 5th of October at midnight. There would be no way to tell that they had died by gunshot wounds before the explosion.
この島に戦争中の爆薬が未だに残ってるというのは紛れもない事実。あ、それが明日の夜、偶然何かの拍子に間違って爆発してしまうのよ。そう、これは事故。爆発事故。どう？絶対に警察にはわからない。これならごまかせる。二人の死体をごまかせる。
ねえ、バカな。
Shaking, Hideyoshi frantically searched for a counter-argument, hoping to repudiate Eva's mad idea. But he couldn't find one. If they blew everything up, the facts would all be muddled. They could make it look as though Krause and Nazi had died in an explosion accident.
完璧だわ。完璧よ。兄さんたちが死んだのだって事故だもの。もう一つ事故が起こるだけの話だわ。 ち。筋書きは適当に考えるわ。とにかく私たちはたまたま明日の夜隠し屋敷にいた。そこで偶然爆発事故が起こって難を逃れた。はあ、そういう筋書きにすればいいのよ。
何をどういう筋書きにするつもりよ。クラウス兄さんと夏日姉さんだけを残して残り全員が隠し屋敷に行っていて、私たちだけが都合よく難を逃れるって一体どういう筋書きよ。
それはこれから考えるって言ってるでしょ、バカローザ。何でもいいのよ。口裏さえ合わせればどうにでもなるのよ。考えるわよ、考えてるわよ。あんたたちも考えなさいよ。誰か考えて。
落ち着くんやエヴァ。わしも考える。みんなも考えとる。必ずうまくいくんや。思いつくんや。お前だけに背負わせとるわけないで。みんなで背負うんやで。大丈夫、大丈夫や。必ずうまい言い訳が思いつくんや。
それはどんな言い訳なの？クラウス兄さんと夏日姉さんの2人だけを屋敷に残して、私たちと子供たちとあと使用人のみんなも一緒に仲良く地下道を探検して、みんなで隠し屋敷で夜を過ごすという、どういう言い訳なの？うまい言い訳があるわけもない。めちゃくちゃだわ。
そのめちゃくちゃを考えるのが私たちの仕事でしょ。何を他人面してんのよ。
Well, more than likely because if we were to live it like this, the police would find out that Eva and Hideyoshi were responsible for their deaths, which is what they want. Whereas Eva is trying to find the escape way from this. So clearly there's gonna be some friction over here.
あんたたちも考えてよ。考えなさいよ。
姉さん、質問するわ。島を吹き飛ばしたらこの黄金はどうなるの？
Yeah, there's also the gold.
それは
I mean, how can you be sure that the gold right over here will be intact when explosions are gonna be going off?
私たちはやっと200億の黄金を手に入れたのよ。それをみすみす吹き飛ばすつもり？
そんなの運べばいいじゃない。運べば。爆発は明日の24時。丸々1日あるのよ。みんなで運べばなんとか。
10トンあるのよ。お米の袋を担ぐのもやっとの私たちが一体どの程度の量をたったの1日で、島の反対側まで通じる長い地下道を徒歩で往復して運ぶっていうのよ。
2 kilometers as well.
それこそむちゃくちゃだわ。
これカードがあるじゃない。さっきあの女から受け取った10億円の入ったカードが。黄金は運べるだけ運べばいい。それを別にしても私たちには10億円が入ったカードがあるわ。3等分しても分け前は最低3億。私たちの誰もがそれで十分に金策をしのげるじゃない。
嫌よ。
何がよ。
ここにこうして200億円の山があるのに、どうして3億ポッチで納得しなきゃいけないのよ。
ローザー。
Not to mention that it would be like in Rosa's eyes, it would be Eva's fault that the 20 billion yen would go down to 300 million. So, yeah, Eva's face twisted in anguish and was met by Rosa's look of cold and concern.
クラウス兄さんたちの取り分を除いたとしても、私たちの取り分は1人50億よ。カードの3億を抜いて残りは47億。それを姉さんが私に払えるって言うなら、この黄金の山は好きにしてくれていいわ。
あんた何をシャーシャーと。協力する気はないの？
姉さん、頭を冷静にして聞いてちょうだい。 私も姉さんも最も多くのお金を手に入れられる方法を提案するわ。
何よ。
素直に警察に取っ組み合いの末銃が暴発したと言って自首してほしいの。
バカ言ってんじゃないわよ。私は嫌よ、警察なんて。
さすがに事件がここで起こったとは言いたくないわね。警察に黄金が見つかっちゃう。そうね、バラ庭園なんてどう？雨が降っているから現場検証の時矛盾が発見されなくていいかもしれない。どういう経緯で雨のバラ庭園で銃を持った兄さんたちと取っ組み合いになったかについては、それこそ姉さんに言い訳を考えてもらうわ。自分たちの罪を隠したいからって私たちとその取り分まで巻き込まないで。
ローザ
ー、いいじゃない。別に何十年も食らい込むわけじゃない。だって事故なんでしょ。ほんの数年で出てこられるわよ。罪を償って綺麗になって戻ってきたら姉さんの分の黄金50億を好きにすればいい。
嫌よ、絶対に嫌よ。私たちが捕まったらどうなるのよ。うちの人の会社はどうなるのよ。
別にいいじゃない、会社なんて。50億もあるんだから、もう働くのもバカバカしいんじゃない？
Although I had never intended to go along with the idea ever proposed. As far as the size of each person's portion went, no one had anything to gain from an explosion accident. By doing that, they could conceal Kraus and Nazi's deaths. There was no other reason to do it. From Rosa's perspective, the ideal outcome would be for them to confess to their crimes, without any unnecessary tricks. All she wanted to do was change the crime scene from here to a different place. However, Eva didn't want to be arrested. She didn't like having her share shrink from 5 billion to 300 million. But even that was more than enough to cover the amount she had been trying to wring out of Kraus in the first place. She wanted to hide what had happened here, even if it meant blowing away 4.7 billion yen. What would happen if they were arrested? The life, the company, and the trust that Eva and her husband had worked so long to build. Those were things that couldn't be bought back with money. So, she wanted to hide Kraus and Nazi's deaths, even if it meant blowing up all 4.7 billion yen worth of her gold. But from Rosa's perspective, that was just irrational nonsense.
なに姉さん、その銃は。私も暴発ということで殺すの？言い訳がますます難しくなるわよ。それどころかクラウス兄さんたちのことも事故とは言い難くなるんじゃないかしら。3人もの死に関わったらかなりの大事件だわ。おそらく求刑は死刑、妥当なところで無期懲役、軽くても10年以上は食らい込みそうね。おとなしく自首しなさいよ。そうすれば不幸な事故がたまたま重なったことで済ませられるわ。無論ケーキだって大したことはない。ジョージ君のことは安心して、私たちでちゃんと面倒を見ておくわ。姉さんの取り分の50億はきっちり手つかずで残しておいてあげるから安心して。
Eva ground her teeth and glared. The Rosa she knew should have been shaken obeying her commands. And yet, Rosa wasn't scared. Her blank expression, no, that slight smile, was one that Eva had never seen before. Yeah, it sure is quite something.
銃を下ろしなさい、姉さん。頭を冷やせば私の提案が最善だとわかるはず。いいじゃない、刑務所。経済行為で考えてみて。仮に10年食らうとしても釈放されれば50億が待ってる。それって年収5億のお仕事ってことでしょ。
But before you said a few years, not 10?
そう思えばお勤めも楽しくなるんじゃない？
嘘だわ。
I mean, imagine if Eva is going to be in prison for 20 years.
あんたはその間に たちの取り分も取って逃げる気よ。あんたの男がそうしたようにね。
うちの人のことは関係ないでしょ。私は逃げないわよ。お金を持ち逃げなんて絶対に。
Well, there you have it. Now Rosa is gonna start to, like, raging right now.
絶対にしないわよ。
Rosa's one stony expression was filled with rage. The two howling people pointed their guns at each other, shouting insults at each other. Rudolph, Kirie, do you have anything to say about all this? You could smell the Golden Doom Reaper slinging closer. The smell of gunpowder, the explosive smell of death, filled the room. Blurp. A bubble of blood dripped from Rose's mouth. Then she fell over lifelessly, like a mannequin.
エヴァ。
私じゃないわよ。私本当に引き金を引いてないのに。
エヴァ姉さんの銃はさっき夏日さんを撃った時弾が空になったでしょ。
Ah, great. Okay. Now we have Kirie in the action too.
再装填してないんだからどう引き金を引いてもその銃では人は殺せないわ。安心して。
As Kirie said this, she maneuvered a lever action with a practice hand, and a smoke-smelling shell casing was ejected. It hit the floor with a small metallic sound, and that tiny sound had a disturbing ring to it.
ローザさんの見込みは少し甘いわ。無刻印のこれだけ大量のインゴットを換金するのなんてどれだけ大変かまるで分かってないわ。
見せ金に使っただけで後ろ宮家黄金伝説なんてのができちまうほど親父の時にだって大きな噂になったんだ。無理さ、換金なんて。換金できねえ黄金の山なんてクソの山と同じだぜ。
10トンもの黄金が水面下で換金されていて次期当主夫婦が開始。これで目立つなという方が無理な話だわ。警察沙汰にしない方がいい。この島を吹き飛ばして証拠隠滅。インゴットに未練があるなら持てる分だけどうぞご勝手に。10億のキャッシュカードだけで見返りは十分。
You know, I had a little bit of faith at some points in the past, Kirie, that maybe you'd be above this kind of thing, but apparently not. You and Rudolph do need a lot of money right now as well, so I guess it is the way it is.
つまりエヴァ姉さんが正しいの。
嬉しいわ。あなたと意見が一致して警察沙汰になれば何が起こるかわからない。黄金の換金だってそうだわ。きっとボロを出すきっかけになるわよ。私たちにはどうにもならなかった。あの女が現金化してくれた10億が私たちに手に入れられる唯一のお金なのよ。そして10億の山分けだけでも私たちには十分すぎるわ。そして今ローザが死んでその分け前はさらに増えたわ。私たちは5億ずつを持って島から出られる。
そういうことよ。黄金を換金したいなんて欲さえ捨てればこの島で起こった全てをなかったことにできる。 そういう仕掛けがここにはあるわ。
There was no longer any reason to worry about accidental discharges or people being shot to death on this island. Actually, you know what? That's a point that only just now came to my mind. Like, from the perspective of Beatrice's games, it always ends on 5th of October. But as far as the adults know, they have the device to stop the explosion. So they could just try their best to carry all the gold, and it doesn't have to be until tomorrow midnight. They can just work their asses off to get the gold as far away as possible. And maybe in like 4 or 5 days they can decide to blow up the island and do that. Yeah. As far as they know. Everything would be erased equally by the explosion accident. And the only thing that maybe they should consider is, well, is Beatrice right over there. No matter what happened between now and midnight the next day, everything would be ruined by the explosion accident.
自首しろですってバカローザ。3億ポッチじゃ嫌？欲の皮を突っ張らせるからよ。自業自得だわ。
しかしキリエさん、何も打つことはなかったやろ。ローザさんかて話せば分かってくれた話や。
撃つ必要はあったのよ。だってローザさんだけが銃を撃ってないんだもの。
そら、どういう意味でっか？
あなたたちの足元に落ちているクラウス兄さんの銃とエヴァ姉さんの銃、どちらも発砲済みだわ。でもローザさんの銃は引き金を引くだけで弾が撃ててしまう。レバーアクションは慣れないとリロード難しいのよ。素人じゃなかなかできないわ。
キリエさん、何の話？
あんた。
They finally realized what Kiria meant. Marosa had the only gun that could still fire, so I shot her first. Oh, how foolish we were. Why didn't we realize sooner? We should have realized that there's a mechanism for erasing everything that happens on this island. Ivan Hideyoshi hurried to pick up the guns that lay at their feet. At the same time, fire spat from Kiria's gun once more. Hideyoshi let out a short scream, clutched at his chest, and fell over face down. Eva fiddled with the lever action, trying to imitate something she vaguely remembered from old westerns. But something seemed to be caught, and the still open lever didn't budge.
ねえ、結構難しいでしょ。
Kiria finished reloading with a fluid motion. The way she held it was as innocent and sure as a kid playing with a squirt gun. With another heartless cry of gunfire, the puppet called Eva slammed down to the floor, as though all her strings had been cut.
ルドルフさん、10億のカード。
おう。
The cash card with $1 billion yen, which Eva had just grabbed from the winch. And that alone was worth more than enough. Man, and no reaction over their deaths or anything. Nada. Almost as if this was all planned in the first place. Christ. What am I gonna do with the two of you? What am I gonna do with you? The 20 billion yen pile of gold that skewed everyone's sense of value. people could kill over a few million yen. And this was a billion.
ローザさん、あんたのさっきのあれ名言よ。3億ポッチ。あんた欲をかきすぎだわ。
違いねえな。お、ラッキーだぜ。死体をまさぐらずに済む。
As Rudolph walked up to Eva's body, he found the card lying beside it and picked it up.
この薄っぺらいの1枚で10億か。もう会社もバカらしいぜ。畳んじまって余生はのんびり南国で過ごすか。
どうせすぐ飽きるわよ。それに私、トラブルで苦悩したり、それを乗り越えて無邪気に喜んだりしてるあなたが好きなんだもの。
言うね。
ありがとう、黄金の魔女さん。この10億は私とルドルフさんで有効に使わせてもらうわ。クラウス兄さんはあんたを紳士的に扱うと約束したわ。でも私はそんな約束をしていない。
She pulled the trigger without a trace of mercy. Okay, well that actually hurt me a little bit more than I thought it would. When the ringing of the gunfire died down, blood trickled from the witch's mouth, and she fell over onto the bed. Once again, Kirie ejected the used shell casing. The 4 metal sounds of used shells hitting the floor seemed to symbolize the fact that Rudolph and his wife now possessed all shares of the gold.
本当に頭の回転の鈍いやつらだわ。爆弾の仕掛けを聞いたとき、この島からすべての仲良しごっこが消え去ったことに気づけなかったなんて。
悪いな、兄貴、姉貴、ローザ。
Okay, well, now what? What is gonna be your next moves then?
まあこいつはたまたまの成り行きだ。勘弁してくれよな。兄貴と姉貴が喧嘩をしてローザがそれに巻き込まれ、俺がひょいっと漁夫の利をさらう。昔からのお約束じゃねえか。なあ。
At the start, Rudolph and Kirie hadn't planned to kill everyone and take everything for themselves. Kirie had quickly realized by the size of the gun in her hand that it would probably hold 5 rounds at a time. Yes, both Kirie and Rudolph knew a lot about these guns. Rudolph, who had gotten his interest in old-style Western guns from his father, owned a shotgun of a similar design. Since Kirie had the same skill at handling firearms, they both knew enough about these guns to enjoy shooting together. Including the witch, there had been 8 people there. 6 people besides the 2 of them. Each gun held 5 rounds, and that was 1 short. They didn't have enough to kill everyone.
兄貴たちが取っ組み合いをして暴発が起こった時には正直驚いたぜ。
That coincidental accident had provided a missing bullet. If nobody shot first, then none of this would have happened in that case. It wasn't the second shot. The very first shot, which had accidentally killed Nazi, had guaranteed the result of this massacre. In the smoke and corpse-filled room of gold, the 2 of them wore easygoing smiles, hardly any different from the ones they usually wore.
どうする？これから。
Rudolph picked up Rosa's gun. Then he fired a test shot at the wall and ejected the old shell with a smooth motion like Kirie's. Kirie went to the box of bullets on the table, casually picked up a few and loaded them one after another into her gun.
爆弾のスイッチをオンに。そしたらあとは24時間を待つだけよ。
朝になれば姿が見えないと騒ぎになるぜ。
騒がせなければいい。
そうなるな。
Oh, great. Here we go.
バトルをどうする？
あなたの子供よ。私の子供じゃないわ。
そういうこと言うなよ。あんなに懐いてたじゃねえか。あいつお前のこと尊敬してるんだぜ。
じゃあうまいこと言いくるめる言い訳を考えてね。私はエンジェのことを考える。あなたはバトラ君のことを考える。公平でしょ？
ああ。
私自分の子供には優しいけれど、アスムさんの子供にまで優しくするの結構大変なの。分かってるでしょ？
Kiria's voice had grown cold. Kiria had acted warmly towards Better because that had been the adult thing to do. He was Rudo's son, so she just tried to avoid being unkind. Although, if we were to think of it, biologically speaking, Beller isn't really Asumo's son. So, yeah. Maybe once again we're going into some sort of a pickle for Rudolph. But underneath, he was the son of Asumo, and the woman whose death had done nothing to quell the hate Kirie harbored towards her. Now she had given birth to Angie and finally built up a new family. Was Bella's return really such a happy thing for her?
腹をくくってここまで来たら10億をつかむか死ぬかだけよ。バトラ君が納得しなかったら悪いけれどそれまでよ。
脅かすなよ。